So, you've got a global recall of baby formula, a hidden toxin, a corporate giant, and its much, much smaller supplier. This is a wild story, really, about how one tiny problem with a single ingredient can spark a massive health scare and, get this, cause a financial earthquake halfway around the world. Let's dive in. So, this is the big question, right? The one that probably sent a chill down the spine of parents everywhere, and you can bet it caused some panic in a few boardrooms. Why on earth would a company as huge as Nestlé pull a global recall for baby formula, of all things? Okay, so here's when it all went down. January 5th, 2026. Nestlé, the Swiss food giant we all know, announces this huge precautionary recall. And we're not talking about a minor issue in one small town. Nope. This was a global alert. All right, first things first. Let's just wrap our heads around how massive this recall actually was. The target was specific batches of their SMA formula. The recall just swept across Europe, hitting all the big markets, the UK, France, Germany, but it didn't even stop there. In total, the alert went out to a whopping 31 different countries and regions. That is a huge footprint. So what was the bad guy in this story? What was the culprit that could trigger such a massive, and I mean urgent, response? Well, the answer is pretty scientific, but it's fascinating. The villain of our story is a toxin called cereulide. It's produced by a pretty common bacterium, Bacillus cereus, and it's known for causing some really unpleasant food poisoning symptoms. Now, you might be thinking, okay, food poisoning. But while those symptoms, nausea, vomiting, cramps, are rough for any of us, for a tiny baby with a developing immune system, it can be really serious. It can lead to dehydration and a whole host of other complications. So you can see why even the potential for contamination is treated like a 5-alarm fire. And here's the real kicker. This is the detail that just turned the risk level up to 11. Cereulide is super heat resistant. What does that mean? It means the normal safety step that every parent takes, boiling the water to make the formula, would do absolutely nothing. It wouldn't destroy the toxin. The danger would still be right there in the bottle. Okay, so you've got this danger that you can't even boil away. What was the official advice for all the worried parents and caregivers out there? The guidance from health authorities was really simple and direct. Step 1, check the batch codes on your formula cans right away. Step 2, and this is the most important one, stop using it immediately. And step 3, if you have even the slightest worry about your child's health, don't hesitate, call a doctor. It's also really important to hear Nestlé's side of this. They made it very clear that the recall was done out of an abundance of caution. And crucially, at the time they announced this, no actual illnesses had been confirmed. So this was all about getting ahead of a potential problem, not reacting to a disaster that had already happened. And this, right here, is where the story takes a fascinating turn. The recall itself was just the tip of the iceberg. The real drama? That was happening behind the scenes, buried deep inside the complicated world of the global supply chain. So Nestlé's investigation pointed the finger not at their own factories, but way back up the chain to a single ingredient that came from an outside supplier. Just one component in a very complex recipe. And what was that ingredient? It's something called ARA, which stands for arachidonic acid. It's basically an oil supplement, a healthy fatty acid that gets added to a lot of infant formulas to help with development. But in this case, it was the source of the whole problem. And that quality issue with the ARA, well, it sent a financial shockwave straight back to its source, a major supplier based in China called Cabio Biotech. As soon as the news hit, Cabio Biotech's stock just went into a nosedive. At one point, it crashed by a jaw-dropping 14.4% in a single day. I mean, for a company that size, that's not just a bad day. That's a direct, brutal financial hit. This massive financial blow to the supplier, it really brings us to the bigger picture here. This whole thing is a powerful case study of risk and who really pays the price in our modern global economy. And here's where you see the incredible imbalance of the whole situation. For the supplier, Cabio Biotech, this was a catastrophe. Their stock closed down almost 12%, a huge deal for them. But for the global giant Nestlé, the cost of this entire massive global recall was less than 0.5% of their annual sales. It was barely a blip on their financial radar, or rounding error. Just look at this comparison. The financial consequences could not be more different. The hit to Nestlé is almost invisible next to the absolute cratering of their supplier's stock. It's a perfect picture of where the real risk is sitting in this supply chain. So why is it so lopsided? Why does one company get crushed while the other barely flinches? Well, as one dairy industry analyst pointed out, the world of specialized ingredients for things like milk powder is, well, it's pretty small. The suppliers are very concentrated. There are only a few major players, like Cabio Biotech. So when one of them takes a hit to their reputation, it hits them, and it hits them incredibly hard. So let's just recap. You have one simple, tiny ingredient from one single supplier, and it triggers a global health alert and nearly sinks that company, all while the corporate giant on top barely feels a thing. It really makes you wonder, right? How fragile are these incredibly complex supply chains that we rely on for literally everything, from our food to our phones? And maybe, more importantly, who is really bearing all the risk?